Miracles very rarely come on their own, but when this cow became pregnant with multiple calves, this farm would see a whole night full of miracles. In Australia in May this year, cattle farmers David and Julie Ingram became the most unusual godparents when they helped their beloved cow give birth. As farmers with decades of experience, they thought they knew everything that could happen with animals giving birth. But they had no way to anticipate the amazing events they were about to encounter during the labor. What started as a routine delivery would turn into a story their children and grandchildren would share for years going forward, and they would share it with the internet right away. David and Julie were experienced beef cattle farmers on the old family plot in a part of rural Tasmania known as Bonang, East Gippsland. The farm was very successful and produced beef for tables all across the globe. But even though it was the size of a small European country, it still had the whimsy and beauty of the animals and livestock that called the Ingram property home. While thousands of cows roamed free on the farm, they were cared for individually, as if they were children of their own. David and Julie loved these animals deeply and had dedicated their entire lives to raising and caring for them with the utmost attention and compassion. Even if their ultimate fate were in the abattoir, whilst they were alive, they were loved and cared for. It would be an understatement to say David and Julie weren't just cattle experts, but they had seen pretty much everything that cows could do. They were experts with extensive knowledge about cattle. Neighboring farms lived in comfort, knowing that Julie and David were nearby and able to help should anything go awry. They were often called first before the vet, who in this remote part of the world would be hours away, even if he arrived by helicopter. The couple helped, but especially loved the process of birthing new cattle, a task that required skill, patience, and experience. Most farmers would swear that David and Julie had birthed all of their cattle, even if such an act would have been impossible, with the thousands of cattle in Bonang and beyond. Both of them were ready at a moment's notice to be called to help with other animal deliveries throughout East Gippsland. Their reputation had spread far and wide, and farmers from miles around trusted them implicitly. The year was going very well, with successful births recorded around the whole region. David and Julie were particularly fortunate to have already successfully delivered 200 healthy calves on their own farm that season alone. When Julie had their twins, David and Teresa, the hospital had been amazed at how calm she had been. Not loud or know-it-all, as some expectant parents can be, but just very chilled out, even when it was revealed that the twins were both of a large and healthy size. The doctor had asked her how she managed it. Julie simply asked, "So they're under 20 pounds in weight?" "Yes." "I'm giving birth indoors, not tied to a fence by torchlight, surrounded by straw?" "Of course not." "Well then, it's going to be a lot easier than the last 100 births I've had to manage, piece of cake." Partially, this was because the hospital was a few hundred kilometers from Billabong, and David and Julie's impressive reputation did not stretch that far. That was until the birth of David and Teresa. The doctor smiled, nodded, and saved up the story to put future expectant mothers at ease. So naturally, David was absolutely thrilled when he discovered that his purebred Hereford was expecting for the second year in a row. This cow, or as she preferred to be called, Maggie T, had always been special to them, and the prospect of another calf filled them with excitement and anticipation, not to mention images of blue ribbons and cups as they won awards at agricultural shows again. David and Julie began their typical preparations for assisting a pregnant cow approaching birth, drawing on their years of experience to ensure everything would go smoothly. They knew this was never an easy or safe matter. Maggie T was a fine and big beast and quite set in her ways. "This lady's not for turning," Julie would say, when facing almost a ton of stubborn cattle flesh with a calf due soon. So they monitored Maggie T closely, taking extra care to ensure her comfort and health throughout every stage of the pregnancy. They used no fancy machines or apps and needed no YouTube videos. Just a clipboard, long thermometer, bucket, and some very long, thick rubber gloves and Wellington boots were all the gear they required. In the beginning, all the cattle were happily living together in the primary barn at the farm. There were multiple generations of cows living side by side. Some animals thrive in the company of others, and cows are certainly among them. They're social creatures who find comfort in the presence of their herd. So at first, the couple left the pregnant cow in the large barn with her friends and family, believing the companionship would do her good. However, after a few days, Julie noticed her acting a little more sluggish than usual. She was eating less and seemed to be in some discomfort, moving more slowly and keeping to herself. Concerned for her well-being, Maggie T was moved out of the larger barn to have some privacy and calm while she came to term. There was a smaller barn close to the farmhouse that would be perfect for her needs. There were no video cameras, just David and Julie popping in to check up on her. Well, them and Rolf, the solicitous barn cat, who never seemed to catch many rats, but kept the cows company and was generally a calming black and white presence. In truth, it might have technically been a shed or a paddock, but after David set the place up to be a little sanctuary for his cow, one would have never known it was ever anything other than a proper barn. He worked hard to make it comfortable and safe, but it was Julie who added the homely touches. The door stood open to give good airflow, and its new tenant had plenty of room to stretch out or curl up depending on her needs. Heat in this part of Australia wasn't much of an issue, rarely dipping below uncomfortably warm even late in the evening. There was always plenty of fresh water in the trough that was frequently changed, and lots of food never nibbled by rats, probably thanks to Rolf the cat. Maggie T appeared to be doing quite well in David and Julie's attentive care. So the pregnancy was off to a good start. However, a few months later something strange happened. Maggie T started eating massive amounts of food each day. Her appetite seemed insatiable, and she had grown considerably larger since her move to the smaller barn. And Maggie T was no small cow to begin with. Had the couple been new to farming or unfamiliar with cows, they might have panicked at the swift changes happening to their cow. Luckily, this was David and Julie, and they suspected right away what might be the cause of her ravenous appetite and dramatic weight gain. In fact, David, the more practical of the couple, finally accepted fate and ordered a couple of battery-powered cameras off the internet. Julie scoffed at the idea. David was trying 21st century technology, but she was a little bit stuck in the 19th century, preferring a simpler time. That said, David came running in a panic of excitement to her one Tuesday evening. He claimed that Maggie T was paralyzed and not moving at all. It took intervention by the twins over the telephone for him to realize that the image on his iPad from the cameras had frozen. In their remote part of Australia, internet speeds were notoriously slow, leading to much laughter at David and a big hug from Julie, who knew his heart was in the right place. But the problem remained unsolved. Why had Maggie T developed an exponential growth in her appetite? Given her size and disposition, Julie began to hypothesize that she was pregnant with twins. You see, the very same cow had gone through exactly that the previous year, so it was not a big stretch to assume it would happen again this time. Her twins from the previous year were living happily in the large barn, healthy and strong, and David and Julie couldn't wait to have two more adorable calves roaming around the property. Twin pregnancies were not rare at the Ingram farm, not by a long shot. In the year 2018, for example, the couple had managed to safely deliver 12 sets of animal twins, an impressive feat by any measure. Often when delivering twins, it can be likely that the mother and one or even both calves can fail to survive. Having 12 cows pregnant with twins, and at the end of the process, having 36 cows, is an event usually as rare as winning the lotto twice in a row. But there was not very much that was usual about David and Julie. With all their years of practice and experience under their belts, David and Julie were well equipped to guide any cow through their pregnancy and the eventual birth. They had seen it all before, or so they thought. But if you think you've seen everything, then be prepared for Mother Nature to show you a surprise. With the labor approaching over the next few months, the farmers had ample time to get set up and prepared to welcome a new calf, or two, into their family. This was Maggie T's second pregnancy, so she seemed comfortable with her body expanding and changing as it was. She appeared calm and content in her little sanctuary. Though a couple of times a week, David would lead one of her friends among the other cows to meet her. Cows are very sociable animals and can suffer from loneliness just as easily as humans. Julie loved to watch Maggie T and the other cows gossip, wondering what they were gossiping about. Were they gossiping about her and David, maybe? Julie actually felt a little bit jealous. When you live in the middle of hundreds of acres of empty scrubland, there's not much company. You'd have to drive hundreds of miles to find somebody to gossip with. David, in one of his gadget-mad moments, had suggested getting a small helicopter to help with herding the cattle. Julie wondered if she could borrow it so she could fly out to see friends for gossip. Well, it was that, or learn to talk to the cows. Eventually, the time came for the delivery. After the 8-month mark, David and Julie kept close watch on her, never straying far from the farm. The pregnancy could last up to 9 months in theory, but David thought it was wise to begin looking for early labor signs a month early. Julie agreed. They were so experienced in cow care, especially births, that these conversations were little more than grunts. They weren't psychic, but literally of one mind together on such a serious subject. Especially when they suspected the cow was having twins, it was very likely her birth would be sooner. Twins often come out a few weeks early, whether they are human or not. Joe, the local flying vet, had at the beginning of his service in Billabong spoken of getting the cows x-rayed or even scanned with an MRI device when they were pregnant. This had made Julie laugh out loud and be unable to speak. David, being of the same mind as his wife, had to explain that either the vet would have to get a pregnant cow into his little helicopter or bring an X-ray or MRI machine in it to the cow. Joe smiled, and he was glad to know that most of the births in his patch were in the safe hands of David and Julie. He was only ever called in for absolute emergencies. Not long after David and Julie began monitoring the cow so closely, they saw the signs they were looking for. She was going into labor. The couple rushed about, gathering the supplies they would need as well as their own protective equipment. Years of experience had taught them to be prepared for anything. They were able to gently bring the cow out of her little barn and into the fresh air, believing the open space would help her feel more comfortable during the delivery. Neighbors from several farms away could hear the sounds of the events that transpired that fateful Australian night. The birth was long and hard. After what seemed like hours, the first calf was ready to come out. David used his gloved hands to help guide the creature out, while Julie focused on keeping the mother as comfortable as possible, speaking soothingly to her and stroking her gently. The couple cried out with joy when they saw a healthy baby calf cradled gently in David's hands. It was a beautiful moment, one they never tired of experiencing. Julie took the calf to clean it up and offered it something to drink, making sure the little one was strong and healthy. David stayed with the mother cow and cleaned her up a bit, praising her for the effort so far. Then he tidied the grass around them and sat back, waiting for the second calf to arrive. Julie returned a few minutes later, just as David had started wondering aloud if they had been wrong about the twins. Perhaps it had just been a tough pregnancy that had increased her appetite more than usual. Maybe they'd misread the signs this time. Julie sat next to David to join him in his quandary when they were interrupted by a cry from the cow. Just when they thought their work was done, another baby seemed ready to join the world. David felt tears well up in his eyes, and Julie laughed lightly at his sentimentality. David really loved twins and liked the idea that the Ingram farm was the resident twin farm in the area. The community sat and listened to the sounds of struggle and joy periodically spreading from the Ingram farm. David and Julie returned to their positions, David down low and Julie up by the cow's head, offering comfort and encouragement. After a few minutes of pushing and adjusting, a heifer was born. "Well done, Mama," Julie sang out, and David brought the baby heifer up for the cow to see. What an absolute success! 2 healthy babies, 1 male and 1 female, were delivered safely that night, and the mother looked like she was on track to recover completely. David and Julie sat back on the grass, each holding a baby. They thought their work was done, but they were soon going to have an amazing surprise that would change everything they thought they knew about cattle births. In the giddy quiet after delivering the twins, the cow very strangely pushed her babies away when they tried to approach. Julie thought she might want to nurse them, but the cow remained in the same position she was in when she had given birth. She seemed in distress, which was very confusing given how well the births had gone. David set the new heifer aside and went over to examine her. What he saw there shocked him to the core. David bent to look and noticed that the cow was not finished giving birth. He yelled out to get his wife's attention and then dove back into work. He urgently put new gloves on as the cow cried and whimpered from pain. Julie burst into action as well, moving to support and comfort her. In absolute shock, the couple guided their cow through a 3rd delivery. When the 3rd calf emerged, healthy and strong, David and Julie cheered with disbelief. They had triplets. David could not contain himself and continued to shout out, "Triplets!" over and over again, alerting all the neighbors to the miraculous event unfolding on their farm. But that is not where the story ends. In a flabbergasting turn of events, the cow was not yet finished with her delivery. Through euphoric tears and joyful exclamations, David and Julie helped deliver a 4th baby, another heifer. For the first time on that farm, and perhaps for the first time in the entire region, quadruplets were born. It was with great relief that David and Julie saw their cow finally drift into a peaceful slumber after delivering the 4th baby. Mom was set to make a full recovery, and the farm family grew by 4 members in a single night. It was truly a miracle of nature, one that none of them was going to forget for the rest of their lives. It speaks volumes of David and Julie's skills that all 5 cows, mother and 4 babies, lived that night. Also, Maggie T's resilience meant that in the future they watched any especially hungry cow very carefully. The odds of cow quadruplets are extraordinarily rare. Some veterinarians estimate it at 1 in 11.2 million. This made the Ingram Farms delivery even more special and newsworthy. The story spread throughout the community and beyond, with people traveling from far and wide to catch a glimpse of the miraculous quadruplets. What an amazing story! Have you ever heard of cows giving birth to quadruplets before? How would you have reacted in David and Julie's shoes? Tell us in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.